Hello, this is Matthew from or with Luminous Beings Books. I don't know how to quite phrase that. Was never too good at grammar. Anyway, welcome to episode 1, which is actually the second episode. There's an episode 0 of Shadow Font, of Filling the Well, me talking about all the things that are creative influences on me, which basically means all media that I take in, because I think all media has an effect on how I perceive things and how I interpret things, and on the kinds of stories I want to tell as well. So, this episode, I want to share my reflections on Black Panther. Went and saw it about 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was a little bit less. But I have a lot of thoughts from Black Panther. I mentioned this was my second run. I recorded like 18 minutes of myself talking, and since I was in the car, it didn't go well. So hopefully and I felt like the audio issues were too great that without going in and editing it, it would have been trouble. And with that, it may not have worked out well. So here we are. Sorry, after that 1 minute intro, I'm going to get right into it. So, first of all, I like Black Panther a lot. I have a passing familiarity with him from the comics, just from like some crossovers from like when I was a kid. I just saw this Black Panther guy and I didn't know much about him, but he was cool. He was like climbing on a bridge or something in a crazy, super gigantic Spider-Man comic with like dinosaurs in it. So like the Savage Land had spilled over or something like that. So like I knew him from there. Just seen him over the years a couple times. And then in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the Avengers cartoon from like, I don't know, probably like right after Avengers came out, whenever that was. He was in that, and T'Challa was super cool. I liked him a lot. I don't remember now if he was ever out of suit in that show or not, which seems kind of strange. He had to have been, but anyway, really cool dude. Anyway, I liked the movie. It was good. It was entertaining. However, it was overhyped. So first I want to talk about what people got wrong. People dissed Blade in the run-up to Black Panther. Yeah, Blade wasn't an all-black cast like Black Panther was, or a chiefly black cast like Black Panther, but Blade was a successful trilogy with a black lead that was super cool. I mean, if you want to be real racist, in the first movie, he wasn't even like attracted to a white woman or anything. He was attracted to a black police officer, and I really feel like the woke, anti-racist, anti-all these things, anti-everything environment that we're in right now, kind of did a disservice to other black superheroes that have come before. Like I think on Screen Junkies they mentioned this Meteor Man, who was technically also a Marvel superhero, and he had like a comedy movie. And then there was like that Wayne's Brothers comedy one where it was like Blank Man or something. And like you could discredit those, or you could dismiss those, I guess. But dismissing Blade, I mean, starring Wesley Snipes, this amazing action star, and, an athlete martial artist, who's had trouble with the law, whatever. Maybe he's an individualist, which I can kind of get behind to some extent. Those movies were good. At least the first two were like rock solid, and the third one I don't really remember, so I couldn't say. But it's really unfortunate that people really displayed or like ignored it coming into this. I know a couple years ago I kind of remembered, hey, didn't Blade, like, wasn't that before Spider-Man? Was that before X-Men? Like, didn't Blade like open the door for the modern superhero movies? And I'm not checking myself. I'm pretty sure he kind of did, if not definitely did. So that's interesting. And then like I said before, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it, but it's kind of standard Marvel fare. Like the bones of a Marvel movie are still there, and I think just the characters and the what else? I wouldn't say it's like, well, maybe it's like a little thematically deeper than your average one, but like the bones are still there, and then just how it's dressed or decorated beyond that with the characters and the setting are like way different and very much unique, but not really anything so exceptional. And I think my kid asked me what I thought about it, and I said, you know what, because I'm not white and I'm not guilty for what happened to black people, because I had nothing to do with it. In fact, this is stupid, but I have a black ancestor I know of for sure, like a great-grandfather, and like because of those things, like I feel no guilt. I'm not marginalizing anybody by being Hispanic or Latin or whatever you want to call it, an American. Or I don't believe I am, and I think a lot of people do, and I believe a lot of those people love this movie because there was only, a scant few non-black people in it, and maybe they weren't cast in the best light or whatever, and that makes them feel good about how guilty they are about being who they are. So that's wrong. I mean that stinks. I don't want my art to be characterized by basically being glad for who I'm not, or like casting down any group. I'm very much against grouping people and categorizing them and either maligning or I don't know, deifying or demonizing or deifying them based on or an individual based on the actions of the class to which they belong, because I don't think people really belong to classes anyway. So definitely the reception of fans is it's irritated me, but it doesn't stop me from liking it. Just like I love The Last Jedi. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, despite the fact that there's a bunch of fans who think it's terrible. On the contrast, or on the other hand, you have a bunch of fans who really enjoyed Black Panther. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, let's see. Okay, so I would just want to go through real quick my favorite elements of the movie. I love the storybook beginning, that kind of like in the X-Men where they had the war room and they were going over stuff like, hey, there's this building here, and it was like almost like metal Etch-a-Sketch type stuff that was being raised up. This kind of reminded me of that, and it was kind of like maybe, I don't know if vibranium is supposed to have a magnetic field attached to it, or maybe through using vibranium technology they can cause this thing to happen. But it looked really cool, and it was interesting, the story that it told of Wakanda, and why it was able to be so advanced and what the vibranium did, and the heart-shaped herb or plant or whatever they called it. So all that stuff was really cool, and what was the best thing about it, in my opinion, is it felt very much like a storybook story, told to children, and in fact, I think it was being told to one of the kids when he was a kid. Anyway, there's still fertile ground. If they wanted to go back there for anything and expand upon anything, any element from there, they totally could, and I like that a lot. Next thing, I like that tradition and ritual matter. I feel like the preservation of tradition in Wakanda is almost a direct result of them being able to cloak themselves and with their border guards keep out imperialist nations. And I'm not trying to be an SJW when I say imperialist. I mean literally different countries throughout history with power, like Britain and the United States, or France too as well, when they went into Africa, they wanted to colonize it and stuff. And because the Wakandans could keep themselves from that, they were able to preserve their culture, their identity, and their way of life. And it's interesting because I guess the idea, or part of the conceit, is that this is what would have happened to blacks if they were never colonized or put under the boot of these imperial powers of the world, these white imperial powers of the world, which, anyway, I'm just sharing that. Okay, another thing I really liked was the blend of technology and nature. They have all this super advanced technology, but you still have people it's not like Coruscant from Star Wars. There are still people on the street walking, and, it's like a very hustle-bustle urban type place, which I'm not really into cities, but I liked the idea where, I kind of think they still had dirt floors and stuff, that's kind of cool. At least in some places they did. And there's, the bazaar type aspect to the marketplace that they were walking through, T'Challa and his, girlfriend or whatever. That was really cool. And it felt really unique and exotic. And I think I'm supposed to be entertained by that. And I sure was. So that was pretty cool. Oh, but then also, you have the general, her husband, whose name I can't remember. I can't remember her name either. But the general, he's, raising rhinos. And they're using the rhinoceros as, beasts of burden to help them defend the border. And, that's pretty dope, too. Let's see. Oh, there's actual diversity. The 5 tribes of Wakanda, they're all Wakandans. But they're all different from each other, and they have their own names and their own kind of special heritage, because they're, they each have their 5 mountain bases or whatever that they kind of come from and unite in the middle. And I just like that reflection that there's different types of people, and not only are the tribes themselves, because that's flattening everybody into a single tribe and a tribal identity, but within the tribes you have all these different people who serve all sorts of different functions. And I know. that, well, I don't know what tribe the general's from, but the diversity, I think I have a note here about the ladies of Wakanda, and I think they better express the diversity in that it's all black people, it's all Wakandans, it's all these tribal people, but the way they live their lives is different, and it's cool that having them all there allows for a greater and a more deep expression of who people can be as individuals, because it's not just a token black character who has to represent, according to whoever cast them or wrote the story, what they think a black person should be, a black man, a black woman, whatever. So that's really cool. So specifically the ladies of Wakanda, I want to talk about them real quick, and keep in mind that they are a large part of the diversity. The general is a loyal soldier and a wife. She basically says she's willing to kill her husband for Wakanda. She's willing to stick with Killmonger at first, or Eric, whatever, because she serves that throne. So she represents a really complex story of duty versus love, or duty versus actual loyalty. Loyalty to are you going to be loyal to your principles? Or are you going to be loyal to a throne or a seat of power? And I think it's really cool that she at first she wants to be dutiful to the throne and the person who's in the throne, but then she realizes this is not reflecting my morals. I'm not okay with this, and then she fights against him, which is neat. The princess, she's a spirited technologist, so she makes an obscene gesture to her brother. She, has an attitude. She's kind of snooty. She's very dismissive and rude about the white guy at first who gets injured, and she fixes the pilot of the CIA guy. And she's got an attitude, but she has an interesting kind of arc, and she kind of goes through some changes, and it's just cool to see. She reflects a lot. There's a lot that she gets to emote and go through, and that was really fun to see. The Queen Mother as well, she's a proud symbol of Wakanda's past, and she kind of bears the sins of the people in the past. But the cool thing is she's flexible enough to see a new direction for the future of her kingdom and people, and I feel like she'd be willing to go with that. Also, she's the only mother who we knowingly see. I'm sure some of the other women around were mothers, but she feels authentically rounded by the myriad roles she's had to occupy in her lifetime by being a wife, a mother, a queen, all these different things. And I think the actress really did a great performance, and I really felt the full weight and gravity of her situation and what she was going through. So that was really great. Another thing I really liked was how complex things were. And there's this problem with power that's kind of explored in Black Panther. So Eric's dad, Eric Killmonger or whatever, his dad wants to dominate the world with Wakandan technology, which Eric takes up that mantle and tries to do the same exact thing. T'Chaka, which I believe is T'Challa's dad, the deceased king, he wants to let the world be and just isolate Wakanda from the harm of the outside world, even though he has the power. So Eric and his dad want to take that power and the authority that it gives them. They want to be might makes right and dominate the world with that power to free the people who they see as oppressed. But in doing so, they will be oppressing other people who used to be free. And T'Chaka doesn't want to do anything. So he's almost the opposite. He's letting a corrupt, unequal, bad system perpetuate, even though he has the power to do something about it. And T'Challa, when he learns about this, he kind of has a complex relationship with it, and he ends up, fighting to stop. He does the noble thing. He ends up fighting to stop the authoritarian overtaking of the world by black people, which I think most people can agree would be wrong. Just like if it was Mexicans or Native Americans or First Nations peoples or Inuits or anybody, a small select group taking taking over the world by means of violence is, I think, a negative thing we can all agree upon. I think some German white guys tried to do that 50, 60 years ago, and everyone still hates them, so why wouldn't they hate the black supremacist nationalists who try to do the same thing? I don't know. Anyway, two wrongs don't make a right. But the issue is still explored in a very interesting way. And at the end of the movie, T'Challa declares that we are all one tribe to the UN or whatever, and he wants to embrace the world and help those who he can. And he specifically wants to use the technology that he has at his disposal or whatever within Wakanda to help people who he sees as oppressed. And I'm totally cool with him choosing to help those people and not to like give the technology to like the United States government, for instance. And I like how the United States government and its actions, its use of soldiers, its use of Eric specifically, to do all sorts of war and make war and to do political assassinations and stuff like this all over the world is brought to the forefront because, especially right now, with things going on in Yemen and Syria and people being mad about Trump and Russia, these are legitimate things, legitimate issues. That the U.S. has been involved with things, and I'm not saying that America's chickens are coming home to roost and we deserve certain things, but if I had the power, if I was king of America by birthright and I got to be the Brown Panther or whatever, or the White Panther more likely, I think I would take. I'm pretty darn sure I would take action to end our involvement in conflict around the world that we don't need to be involved in, and take kind of a stance between T'Challa and T'Chaka, and not ignore the rest of the world, but definitely not try to get entangled in other people's conflicts and help them kill people who they don't like. Last thing I really liked that I can think of it right now, because I don't want this to go on for too long, is the spiritual plane. I really like that both Eric and T'Challa got to see visions and experience something in the spiritual world, and it means that there's a legitimate, real spiritual world in the Marvel Universe, I guess, and in the world of Black Panther, and that's pretty cool. We glimpsed something like a spiritual or supernatural world in Doctor Strange, but this takes it to more like a, not heaven hell, because that the hell part doesn't actually attract me or matter to me so much. More that there is an afterlife and there is a great source from which all life comes, and I like that. I think we need more of that. I think there's a lot of self-destructive attitude and nihilism, maybe not preached by, but that is a consequence of this atheistic rejection of God that happens, or any deity of any sort, that happens in like a secularizing society or a secular society. And I think a spiritual, like moral imperative, as long as it's not forced on other people, is a good, healthy thing to have. So I believe in a God, or the God. The one, the only one, as far as I believe, and I'm raising my children in a way that reflects that, and I'm raising them to do that. And if they stray in the future, that's not my fault, or I hope it's not my fault. I intend to do my best to, to show them the way I think is right. And if they, choose to go a different way, hey, that's the breaks, unfortunately. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. But I mean, while being a father does affect me and my writing and everything, I don't want to get into that at the moment. I want to move real quick into my takeaways. So T'Challa is humble, noble, and flawed, and these are the kinds of things that I want to incorporate into my characters, my stories, going forward. So T'Challa is noble, humble, and flawed. He doesn't have all the answers, and he relies on others around him for help. I think that's really groovy. Also, there's an idea of just going with it. I feel like whatever your conceit, this movie showed me that whatever your conceit is, if you speed past it, it will probably work. Sorry, I got distracted by something. Black Panther pulled a Star Wars 77 type thing, and it just dropped you into this formed world without explaining it. That feels freeing, and when done right, the audience doesn't care about all your lore and mechanics. I kind of puzzled over some of the mechanics, but that was only days after, and it didn't really matter. The movie convinced me that it totally works within its own context. And, the characters reacted to it in a way that showed that it works. And then the last thing is, considering an ensemble cast for a character's introduction. Heck, you could introduce a whole cast of characters who are an ensemble, who are either part of each other's worlds, or, a single world together, Black Panther, the princess, the general, the rhino training dude, all these other people. Even the CIA guy who he knew from a mission before or whatever. Not a mission, because he wasn't Black Panther public, or was he? I can't remember now. But I don't know, I might take a couple of my characters, maybe who might conflict with each other, and introduce them in a story together for one of these short stories I'm doing for Tales of Luminous Beings. I think that might be kind of cool. So anyway, that's it for now. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to get get more of my videos, and you can ring the notification bell to get a notification every time they come out. And I thank you for your time.